meeting here. Sorry we're a little bit late. We want to make sure we let everybody have a little extra time to show up on this incredibly sunny, beautiful day.
Levitating.
Thanks for
Commissioner Fish. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. I'm sorry.
All right, we're just going to open up the meeting. Just going to go over some quick ground rules. Just asking everybody to please be respectful. Please limit your comments to the time allocated. And please try to speak to the issue and not add certain people. And people will be given one warning. If they continue to be disruptive, they'll be asked to leave after that. So hopefully that won't be an issue. So that's the ground rules, and we'll just go through a quick introduction. If you just want to say who you are, where you live in the neighborhood, what might have brought you out to the meeting tonight. My name is David Lynn. I'm the chair and chair of the outreach committee, and I had to be here. I live around 81st and Holiday.
I'm Jonathan. I'm on the Parks Commission, and I had to be here also around 94.
There's the enthusiasm.
Really?
There's the enthusiasm. You guys don't get to start next time.
I'm Brad, and I've been told I'm the treasurer, so thank you for coming out.
My name is Amanda Rose. I'm the vice chair and chair of the Land Use and Transportation Committee, and I'm thrilled to be here. And thank you all for coming out on this lovely day. I know we'd all rather be outside.
My name is John Rotter. I am the Public Safety Chair, and I am in charge of the Public Safety Committee.
Hi, I'm Olivia Louise. I'm on the Southeast Uplift Delegate, and so I've got a really exciting report back, and I'm also doing the Houses and Housing Forum, so that's a subcommittee right now.
Michael Sunleitner recently left the board. My term expired after 3 years of service here as chair and vice chair, and now I'm a politician. Now I'm an elected member of the Portland Community College Board of Trustees, representing Zone 3, which is this area. And I live on 80th Avenue and Taylor Court. It's about 6 or 7 blocks that way.
Greg Burrell, 88th and Lincoln.
Who's that?
I'm the chancellor.
I'm Jane Lawson. I live on 92nd and Salmon.
I'm Juliette Purcell, here from PCC Southeast Campus's Adult Basic Education Program. Robert Hughes from 92nd and Salmon.
Kate, I live
I'm John Karashi. I'm a supporter of Nick Fish, and I'm not from this area, but interested in hearing conversations. Tom Kelton, I live near 80th Basin.
Pat Sanders and 80th Basin.
I'm Bill Williams, visiting from Glenwood, Garland.
I'm Nick Fish. I'm a Portland City Commissioner.
I'm Janice Johnson, and I'm from the Oregon Long-Term Care on Hudson program, and I'm here recruiting.
Hi, my name is Julia DeBra, and I'm running for Portland City Council position 2 as well, and I live at 88th and Taylor, so this is my neighborhood.
I'm her assistant. I'm Julia's assistant. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Andrew Wilkins. I live in 80th and Oregon, and I film the meetings for Village Portland.
I'm Rex Burkholder. I'm here with Nick Fish. I am a member of the Rockefeller Food Block, and eat pancakes in this room.
Thank you. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you very much, and again for making it out on such a beautiful day. So just a quick rundown. We'll just do a quick approval of the agenda. If there's any additions, I'll move to approve the agenda. Yeah, for the general meeting.
So moved.
All right, all in favor? And it's this is general membership vote, so any of you can vote to approve or not approve the agenda. All in favor? All right, all opposed? Seeing none, approved the agenda. And we will go into our first special guests, and I really want to give a warm welcome to our City Commissioner, Nick Fish, and the other candidate in the race, Julia DeGraw, who's also a Montevilla resident. So we were going to do a quick kind of forum, since it wasn't kind of we had time for full debate. We were just going to do a kind of shortened version with 3-minute introductions from each individual, and then 4 general questions which have come up in the neighborhood over and over again, and that's homelessness and housing, livability issues and crime, police funding and accountability, and finally my selected question, the role of neighborhood associations and city governments. So, and then we'll have a wrap up and thank you. And if there's any extra time, leave some questions. But Commissioner Fish, would you like to start?
And do you guys want this, is this fan loud or
Yes,
would you
too
rather?
loud.
Too loud, yeah. I just wanted to get some air circulating before the meeting.
So can people hear me in the back? So hi, folks, I'm Nick Fish. I am a Portland City Commissioner for 20 years. I lived in Northeast Portland, and about 1.5 years ago, my family and I moved to a rental apartment downtown, and I walked to work. My favorite breakfast joint in the city is the Bipartisan Cafe, and who knew that they also have the best bagels and lox in the city. Before I was in elected office, I was a civil rights lawyer for 20 years, and I am passionate about justice and about making sure that everyone in our community gets a fair chance. So I'm running for re-election to the council. I believe I have the experience and the deep relationships in our community and the passion for public service that continue to move our city forward. I think it's fair to say I know how to get things done, and I think my record proves that. Now tonight we're going to have a chance to go deeper on some of the more important issues in our community, but I want to highlight a few things that I've been involved with out here in Mid and East County. The first is, in my role as the council liaison to Venture Portland, I've been the small business champion on the city council. And what that means is that I've been working with the 50 neighborhood business districts in our city trying to build capacity. Now the truth is, the closer you are to the inner core, the more successful many of those districts are. And the further out in North Portland and outer Southeast and places like Park Rose, districts are still struggling to create an identity. So we created an initiative and got council funding to build capacity. And that's helped Montevilla, that's helped Park Rose, that's helped all kinds of business associations here in Mid and East County, and I'm very proud of that. I also was on the council when we launched the East Portland Action Plan, which was I think a watershed moment in engaging the voices of East Portland in all of our decision making. And then when I had a chance, I moved to put the funding on a permanent basis. And the East Portland Action Plan is the planning vehicle through which the council over the last 5 or 6 years has been able to make huge strides in investing in East Portland, but not presuming to know where to make those investments, engaging the community in a very dynamic way. I've been working with my friend and colleague, Commissioner Fritz, to deal with a very urgent challenge out of Mid-County and East County, which is the deficit of good parks. And we know there's a lot of deficits in infrastructure and city investments over time. Parks is a conspicuous example. And so when I was the Parks Commissioner, we launched something called E205. And that was east of 205. We laid the groundwork for a big lift. And we said that the folks living in East Portland, the families and the 40% of our children deserve to have the same kind of parks infrastructure as the rest of the city. Well, I'm proud to report to you that in the last 4 or 5 years under Commissioner Fritz's leadership, we've invested over $50 million in new parks in East Portland, and we're not done. So we're closing the gap. I'm also the council lead on brownfields and taking industrial land that's polluted and converting it for productive use. And there's a lot of brownfields out here in East Portland, as there are in inner Northeast. So that's why I'm working with Jessica Vega-Peterson, the county commissioner out here, as well as with my friend Lou Frederick, to not only remediate and bring those brownfields back, but to make sure that the jobs and the opportunities stay in the local communities. Finally, we couldn't have a conversation in this place and in this neighborhood without talking about transportation. It is long overdue that the city took back from ODOT 82nd Avenue and Powell. Now they are known colloquially as orphaned highways. We know them as badly managed highways. We also know them as the most dangerous highways in the region. Too many people are dying out here needlessly. It is time to get ODOT to not only bring these roads up to city standards, but then transfer them to the city so that we can maintain them. And one of the things I'm very proud that the council has done is launched Vision Zero. One fatality is too many on our streets. And last year about 45 people died. either in accidents, car accidents, or bike accidents, or pedestrian deaths. And most of them are preventable. And it starts with getting people to slow down. I love this sign over here, 20 miles an hour. 70% of our residential streets are now going to be 20 mile an hour. And there is, because of that, and I supported that enthusiastically, we'll save lives.
Great.
Is that the end?
Yeah. I'll just give it a little bit extra time, but.
No, I'll try to, my peripheral vision will get better so I can get the warning. Anyway, I look forward to our conversation and to our friends at the Montevilla Neighborhood Association. Thank you for hosting this. I think you are the only one of 3 neighborhood associations in the city that have done this. And so speaking for all the candidates, I thank you for the invitation.
Mr. Coffey, you want to take an extra minute?
All right, hey everybody. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Again, my name is Julia DeGraw, and I'm running for Portland City Council, Position 2. And I'm the only City Council candidate running on a system change platform. I'm really acknowledging the fact that Portlanders lack representation in our current political system. Right now, all but one of our city commissioners lives in Southwest Portland. That is not representation. And living east of 82nd Avenue, if I were elected tomorrow, I would be the only city commissioner who lives in Southeast Portland at all, let alone east of Cesar Chavez Boulevard. So I'm really advocating for city council districts so we can elect folks from every area of the city and have those elected officials be responsible to their constituents, to the folks who got them into office. Because that's the other issue. The commission form of government that we have, in which we have 5 commissioners representing a city of over 700,000 people, is not adequate for representing us. It consolidates power, it's non-transparent, and it's not accountable to the people. And if we have a representative form of government with city council districts that are held, and where we have elected officials that are accountable to their constituents, then we can really go further in centering communities and our neighborhood associations and decision-making processes and really coming up with solutions that work. I was born and raised in the Portland metro area. My grandparents lived in the Montevilla neighborhood, and I remember my brother and I riding our bikes around. They lived in a cul-de-sac near here, and there were roads along near their house that were not paved and covered in potholes. Those same roads are still not paved and covered in potholes, and I realize we have a lot of problems, and unpaved roads is maybe not at the top of your list, but I have to say, 30 some odd years later, that's not a lot of progress after, being forced to become part of the city. The services that we were promised really, frankly, never really came. And it's glad to see progress on parks. I'm very excited about that, but we need so much more investment in our neighborhoods, especially east of 82nd. If you look at our city, this is really the center of the city anymore. And it really doesn't appear that way, and I think this lack of representation is a big reason why. In terms of what I want to bring to and also in terms of my background, I come from an organizing background. I worked at the consumer advocacy organization Food and Water Watch. The lead issue that I worked on that most folks know about is the campaign to keep a Nestle water bottling facility out of the Columbia River Gorge. They wanted to bottle our public water, and we fought a 9-year fight at the statewide level, including a ballot measure, to ultimately win and make sure that Nestle was not going to gain access to public water in the state of Oregon. And I've also worked alongside, and I've built broad coalitions on a variety of issues working at Food and Water Watch to achieve change in our communities. I know what it's like to work with a diverse group of people with limited resources and to win anyway. So I have a track record of really knowing how to work across broad groups of people and achieve change, and that's really what we need. We need to have more community-centered ways of decision-making. And I want to add that we need bold new leadership on council. We have really, really big problems. This housing crisis, some of the worst air quality of any major city in the United States, and really it's a failure of leadership over the last decade or so and a broken form of government that's led to these problems, and we have to dramatically change how we're running the city if we want to get different results. And I'm hoping that all of you and folks from all over the city will join me in creating a bold new future where we really have visionary ideas about how to solve our problems. We have to think beyond election cycles and really plan for the city we want to see 20, 30, 50 years from now and create policies toward that vision. And I'm going to wrap up by saying that I'm not receiving any corporate donations on this campaign. I want to make it abundantly clear that I stand with the people of this city and that I'm accountable to you. I also want to prove to folks that we can run viable grassroots candidates even in the current system we have until we achieve the city council districts, which is what we're going to do. I have the backing of Bill Bradbury. I recently received his endorsement. He's the former Secretary of State, and I look forward to getting your vote this May. Thank you.
All right, and the first issue, housing and homelessness. And I'll sit here.
Oh yeah, for time. That'll be good.
Yeah, good.
We'll
My
be able to
purple.
see you.
Do you have a
Go ahead.
specific question?
I don't have a question.
Homelessness and housing.
So we were told that was a category. Is there a specific question?
Well, it's just what are your...
Oh, that's fine. Thank you. No,
reflections and
that's
plans?
even better.
It's kind of nice.
So that's,
What do you want to say?
thank you. Let me also say, not only was the fight Julia was involved with Nestle a good fight, but she joined me and others in opposing the takeover of our public utilities, and I appreciated her energy around that a number of years ago. That was a very cynical campaign. So homelessness and housing. I think we can all agree this is the #1 issue facing our community. And it's, I believe, the #1 moral issue facing our community. Because how we address this and the way we address it will speak volumes about the kind of people we are. So we're a city that has done very well in the last 10 years. We have a thriving economy. We have people moving here all the time. We have jobs coming here. We're stacking up very nicely compared to our peer cities around the country. And for those of us who have pride in this city, this is a good time to be a Portlander. But there's a flip side to the success we've had. And that is we're pricing too many people out of our community by bidding up the price of land and housing. And that means there's a question about whether middle class and working class families are going to be able to live in Portland going forward. And it certainly means that we have a challenge of dealing with our homeless neighbors, many of whom are on the street, 2/3 of whom on the street are struggling with addiction and mental health crises. So where do we go from here? I have been a bold leader on council around housing issues. I ran for office with a platform of housing, and I created the Portland Housing Bureau. And I consolidated all the city's programs under one roof because I thought there was too much infighting and fragmentation of programs. And when the idea was hatched to unify the systems between the city and the county, I was a champion, and today we have a joint office of homeless services that's doing amazing work. And in part, thanks to my leadership, we will preserve $27 million of funding in this budget cycle for the joint office, which is making a difference. But the question is, what can we do at a policy level to address this crisis? I think there's a number of things. Number one, our hands are tied in Salem because we're preempted from doing a number of things we want to do to protect renters. So recognizing that, I work with Chloe Udaly and my council colleagues to enact historic renter protections. And the theme of those protections is if you get an unreasonably high rent increase, it triggers a requirement that the landlord relocate you at his or her expense if you can't afford to pay that rent. As I said, we've created the Joint Office of Homeless Services and coordinated the services that we offer to homeless neighbors. I was one of the leaders in the housing bond effort, which generated a historic win a year ago, and we are now investing those proceeds in acquiring and preserving housing. I work with the housing community to build Bud Clark Commons, which was the first place of its kind in the city, a place where homeless people and low-income folks and people seeking services could all come together under one roof and be served. I preserved 11 buildings downtown that were faced with being converted to condos or luxury apartments and were home to older adults and people with disabilities. And we convinced all 11 owners to sell their buildings to nonprofits so that a very vulnerable population would continue to have a place called home. And under my watch, we've strengthened fair housing enforcement, tackling the pervasive issue of discrimination in our community. And it is an absolute disgrace that the current Secretary of HUD, Mr. Carson, has actually proposed to take discrimination out of the mandate of our federal housing agency. But we have so much more work to do. I think it's time that we declared this our Katrina moment. If the President of the United States today said that 5,000 Syrians were coming to Portland and needed to be relocated, we would greet them at the airport, we would find the housing in abandoned buildings, People would volunteer to put people in their guest rooms or ADUs. We would raise the money to take care of the kids and the families. There's no question Portland would step up. Well, we have a Katrina moment, and we have refugees in our community. They're on our streets, and they're intense. Why can't we summon as a community the same sense of urgency to address the problem? Done?
Just about, yeah, go ahead.
Almost.
Finish that though.
And I think it's time. In Portland, we can do anything when we link arms and work together. We need a Katrina moment. We need a metro housing bond. It's time for the metro area to step up. And we need the private sector to stop complaining and step up to the plate and start investing in solutions. Thank you.
So yeah, this is, all right. This is definitely a kind of a two-part issue, right? We have a housing crisis in which folks are being priced out of the city of Portland, as well as a houselessness crisis, right? Where folks actually don't have a home at all. These problems are interrelated, but how we solve them involve, very different solutions in some cases. So, I mean, first of all, in addressing houselessness, we have to decriminalize being homeless in this city. We have to decriminalize poverty. And that's a really important first step. And it's one of the reasons I was really proud of this neighborhood association for taking a stance on no more police sweeps of the houseless population, realizing that that wasn't a humane way of dealing with the problem. We need better short-term solutions. I'm really excited to have seen the joint office of housing and homelessness formed, between the county and the city, so they could combine resources to really address these problems. I really would have liked to have seen that happen 10 years ago, right? We saw the writing on the wall, or we should have seen the writing on the wall with this housing crisis 10 years ago and started planning for it accordingly. And our city leadership really didn't do that. And I do agree that a lot of momentum is happening right now to solve these problems. But really, we needed leadership that was this urgent about this issue before it got this bad, right? We needed to plan ahead, and we really failed to do so. In terms of moving forward, we need to really think outside of the developer box when it comes to building affordable housing. And that doesn't mean market rate, it means actually affordable. A lot of market rate housing is not affordable to most Portlanders. And if we're going to rely on the private sector to solve our affordable housing crisis, we're never going to get there. So this is why I'm urging the city to look into community land trust models of housing, where you create permanent affordability, and where there's permanently affordable housing that's built into the equation that way. We also need more public options for housing, and we also need to get really creative about how we spend existing funds. You look at Prosper Portland and other bids that the city sends out for large projects. We send millions of dollars to out-of-state contractors to build really large projects. What if we broke up those large sums of money into community level development where local contractors could bid to do that development, and we could do permanently affordable community center development with existing funds rather than having that money go out of state? I think Prosper Portland could really afford to be restructured so that the majority of the funds are actually going into our communities and staying in our communities and creating jobs right here in Portland, where we can help develop a local workforce and create permanent affordability for both housing and businesses. I think we really need to look at having a broad, visionary, new take on how we solve our housing problems. And this also is intersectional in terms of, we tend to try to solve our problems as though they're in silos. This is one of the issues with the commission form of government. As we continue to try to improve our communities, we need to make sure that we preserve existing affordability before we do development. In Milwaukee, they built the MAX line out to Milwaukee. The affordable housing went away overnight. We have to preserve these affordable units that currently exist in order to stop the bleeding, right? So that people can afford to stay in these neighborhoods, especially as they improve. Here in Southeast, we deserve to be able to live in the neighborhoods that we've lived in for our entire lives, some of us, as we get these parks and improve transit and get more development, right? So I think we just need to really roll up our sleeves, work together with communities, find creative ways of spending existing budgets, and explore really bold new solutions like community land trust if we're going to really actually permanently solve these problems instead of just nipping at the edges and relying on the private sector to get it right. And I think that's it.
Thank you.
All right, the next subject, livability issues and crime.
Well, we could spend all evening on this topic, but let's hit some of the highlights. I think the question on everyone's mind tonight is, in light of the tough budget choices that the council is going to have to grapple with, do I, as a city commissioner, support a proposal which has been floated by the mayor's office to take cuts in parks to fund more police officers? And this is the first time I've had a chance to address that since the budget forum. And so I'm going to give you my answer to that, and the answer is no. The parks programs that are being targeted for cuts are the kinds of programs that, whether we're in good times or bad times, families and children and older adults rely on in our community. We should never seriously contemplate closing community centers, scaling back on programs people need to avoid isolation, giving the kinds of services children need to have enriched after-school activities. You could argue that one of the best public safety strategies that we could have is to give our kids a safe place to be after school and on the weekends. And that's what Portland Parks and Rec does. So to the idea that we are going to fund a public safety agenda off the backs of the Parks Bureau, I cannot support that agenda. So the question then becomes, if the mayor believes we need some additional police officers to have a more robust community policing agenda, and community policing, after all, was something that Bud Clark helped pioneer, and the idea was to get police officers out of their cars and build relationships with business owners and residents. And the problem with community policing is that when people are walking a beat, they're not able to answer calls. So someone else has to be available to answer those urgent calls, which means you have a staffing issue. If we are going to beef up community policing, we will have to look for other sources of savings within the budget other than parks, or we're going to have to look to a new revenue measure. But I can't support the current proposal. Now, in addition to the sort of role that Parks Bureau plays, let's also talk about livability in terms of safe streets. Part of livability is knowing that you can cross a street safely, that your kids can go outside and play, that you can go up and down Powell without fear of being in a fatal accident, that you can ride your bike in this neighborhood without fear of being sideswiped. In that instance, I think the city is focused on the right direction, but we have to affect a culture change. There's frankly too much selfishness on our roads. People are driving too fast and too recklessly, putting too many people at risk. I lost a family member to a car accident. I have spent my entire life grieving that loss. I wish that on no one. I wish that on no one. We have to send a clear signal that we're going to hold people accountable who speed, and that means we're going to have to enforce the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. Now, we're going to do it in a way that is not discriminatory and doesn't target any particular group. But until we bring the speeds down and we hold people accountable, we're going to continue to lose people on our streets and our sidewalks, and that's unacceptable. Thank you.
So yes, in terms of livability, I think I definitely recognize that this is a citywide election, and if I win, I would be a city commissioner to the full city of Portland, and I would have every intention of representing the entire city and making sure communities from across the city are well represented. That said, 82nd Avenue is the geographic and population center of the city, right? And the investments and the way that we approach investing in the livability of our neighborhoods, the lack of that investment, I should say, really shows, especially east of 82nd, the further east you go. So we need to really commit to thinking really hard about how we allocate resources here in Southeast Portland to help us catch up to other parts of the city. In terms of livability. I mentioned this earlier, but that does include paving the roads, getting sidewalks, increasing lighting, having better crosswalks. It also means as we upgrade our roads out here in East County and in these part of the city, we need to think about how we slow down cars through design. People drive fast on 82nd in these large thoroughfares because they're designed for cars to drive fast on them. We have a very, very car-centric infrastructure. We need to think really holistically as we go in there to do upgrades to our roads and developing them in ways that are more centered on moving people whether it's through mass transit, bike lanes, walkability, making sure we have 20-minute neighborhoods where you don't live more than 20 minutes away from everything you could need, right? This is what the vision should be, and we should plan according to that. And we should take a lot of input from communities where they live on what they want that to look like, right? That will help increase our livability. And there's a huge correlation to quality of life and the livability of our neighborhoods and crime, right? We have to invest in the quality of our education system and in the safety of our neighborhoods in order to avoid these negative outcomes, right? And really approaching these public safety issues as more of a public health issue is how we need to be doing it. And there's a lot of folks at the county who treat this as a public health issue, and I think that's the right approach. And one of the ways we can get having more police officers or more people like them on the beat is we can hire unarmed first responders. We could have mental health professionals that are unarmed who get paid less than an armed police officer. You can hire more of them, and they can be out there on the streets. They can be responding to these nonviolent emergencies or these nonviolent calls and actually serving the people of the city. We have a huge problem right now with police accountability, and we'll get that to the next question, but I just wanted to get at that. In terms of our livability, I think if we are trying to get more folks out there on the streets and addressing our safety, there's no reason that they need to have a gun. So I guess I'll just wrap up by saying that I want to reiterate that we need to have strong anti-displacement policies as we develop the city so that people who live in these neighborhoods can afford to stay in them. Thank you.
Two more questions and then a wrap-up, right? We got a brief wrap-up.
Yeah, and police funding and accountability, sadly relevant.
Yes.
Given at the current time, and even at the time when memorials are happening, previous events.
Yep, sadly relevant. So, I can't talk about what happened over the weekend because it's an open investigation and it's inappropriate to get ahead of the internal investigation and then the public review. But obviously, there are aspects of what we've read in the paper that are of concern to all of us. In the 20 years before I had the honor of being elected to the council, I was a civil rights lawyer. I brought one of the first cases, substantial cases of HIV discrimination in a healthcare setting, where I represented someone who was retaliated against for standing up for the rights of a patient who was HIV positive. I represented working people in claims they had for wages and working conditions, and I did some work representing progressive unions. So the idea of police funding and accountability, I think, is core to my values as a progressive, and I think is core to the question of what kind of city are we and do we want to be. So I believe very strongly in the idea of community policing. We've talked about it before. I don't think there's any disagreement. In the 20-odd years that I've lived here, and I have witnessed major changes in our community, the typical time that I've seen a police officer is speeding through an intersection off to answer a call. Very rarely have I had the chance to meet with a police officer walking a beat. And things change when you develop a personal relationship with someone, particularly if they're carrying a lethal weapon. And we've got to get cops out of their cars and into the communities, and we've got to start building relationships because that's where the trust building happens. Now, the Department of Justice settlement, which I supported, has called for some bold actions, and the good news is that we have made substantial progress. And I think there's a tendency at election time to always present the narrative as cup half empty. On this one, I think we can say cup half full. We have put in place new training and new de-escalation strategies. I voted to fund a new training center. We did not have a state-of-the-art training center for police officers, and that's changed. It took us a while, but I finally tag teamed with Mayor Wheeler to finally, once and for all, put an end to the 48-hour rule, which was the practice that prevented the city from interviewing officers involved in officer-involved shootings, sometimes indefinitely, preventing us from getting contemporaneous records and information from someone who was obviously integrally involved in the shooting. And we did that against not only a police union that fought tenaciously, but a district attorney that had concerns about whether it was actually enforceable. The community has said loud and clear that the 48-hour rule needed to go. And I was the commissioner who worked with the mayor to end it, and I'm very proud of that. I think we also have to acknowledge that we have a new chief, and she is a historical chief. She's a young black woman who has come here with a bold reform agenda. I've been very impressed with her in my early interactions. Time will tell what kind of chief she's become, but I'll say this, she needs our support now more than ever. And I'm counting on her and the mayor to bring about a culture change in our police bureau.
So yes, the purpose of the Portland Police is to protect and serve the people of this city. And unfortunately, there's a lot of folks who live here in the city who don't feel particularly protected or served by the Portland Police because of how they are targeted. And there's some very concerning reports from the DOJ and also the most recent city audit from the city's auditor's office. There were some really major concerns regarding the gang task force at the city, the Portland Police have. There seems to be a lot of evidence of what really looks like racial profiling, right? We're talking about 90% of the car stops are targeting African American individuals, and the city was 6% African Americans. That's very deeply concerning. So there is a lot of room for improvement for, as Nick said, a culture change at the Portland Police. Obviously something needs to give here, especially after the most recent shooting, which comes in a long line of what looks like excessive use of force, which they've also been found guilty to be doing from the Department of Justice, right? And I think that part of the issue here is we're dealing with a really problematic police contract. It makes it very hard to hold our police accountable. And when you have a job as important as protecting and serving the citizens of this city, it's really concerning that it's so hard to hold problem police officers accountable, right? We deserve to be able to hold problem police officers accountable who are known to use excessive force or to be racially motivated when they use force. I also want to say that there's no reason to have a militarized police. We are a civilian population. When we're exercising our freedom of speech, when people are out marching in the streets and exercising their freedom of speech, I really can't think of a situation in which Portland Police need to be able to have a tank or riot gear, right? So I think we just need to think really hard about this cultural shift needs to include answering really hard questions about what does a good police contract look like? What should we be negotiating there? And is there ever a reason for a police to have use and access to military level equipment and weapons? I mean, I personally don't think if your job is to protect and serve civilians, there's any reason to have a militarized police force. And again, I said this in the earlier question, but we should really seriously look. I mean, if there's a staffing issue, if they really feel that there's not enough police officers to respond to the calls that they're getting, we should seriously look at having more unarmed first responders and mental health professionals, also highly trained in de-escalation tactics, in order to respond to most of the calls we're getting, which are not violent. And that said, those who are armed police officers need to have, and I'm really glad to see this happening, more de-escalation training and more accountability when officers are known to use excessive force. So, thank you.
All right, the role of neighborhood associations.
I think we should abolish them. Thank you very much. So, two-part answer. The first is the role of neighborhood associations, and I want to talk a little bit about my record in addressing a related issue, which is boards and commissions, and how we engage citizens in our community. So, I am a passionate believer in the neighborhood association movement. It is the way in our current form of government that we stay connected to neighborhoods across the city. There are something like 95 neighborhood associations and 50 business districts, and we need to hear from them on a regular basis. And this is one of the ways.
Sorry.
I didn't interrupt you, sir.
You're right.
This is one of the ways that we stay in touch with the concerns of people in our neighborhoods. Now, there's some talk at the Office of Neighborhood Involvement, which has a new commissioner in charge, Commissioner Daly, of some changes in the structure of neighborhood associations, and it's produced a pretty lively debate. I'll give you my my own view on this subject. I'm not interested in replacing our current system of neighborhood associations. I'm interested in strengthening the system. And strengthening the system means having more voices at the table. And I will tell you, as someone who has visited a lot of neighborhood associations, there are disproportionately, and many neighborhood associations, more homeowners than renters. The people who show up tend to be older, not younger. And there are people who've done it for a very long time in neighborhoods where there are other voices seeking to be heard. That's not a criticism on anyone, that's just acknowledging a system that could be strengthened. And so I look forward to recommendations that Commissioner Udaly and ONI come forward with to make sure that renters and people of color and younger people have more voices in our community. And if that means a greater chance to express themselves in neighborhood associations, I think we should embrace that and not be fearful of it. But let me give you one of my pet peeves. I think the city of Portland has a bad habit of wearing people out in volunteer assignments. And we've done that historically through our boards and commissions, and we have over 100 of them, and perhaps there's some people in this room that can name them. I'd be willing to give you a dinner at the Country Cat if you could. But they proliferate like crazy, and they often get launched without any clear guidance to the people serving. And that's why we've had these big fights about, is this person a public official or not? Are their emails open to public records requests or not? What is their mandate? What's the lane they're in? So I brought forward a comprehensive reform effort that said, if we're going to ask people in our community to volunteer time and help us make decisions, the least we ought to do is give them the training they need to be effective, standardized bylaws and other things. We ought to keep a database of who serves so that we make sure that there are new voices being allowed in. And finally, we should insist that people disclose conflicts of interest. And I know you'll find this hard to believe, but historically that was a voluntary act at boards and commissions. It was not mandatory. It is mandatory today because of my legislation. And this is why I feel so strongly about it. If we're going to ask you to give up a lot of time to help us get it right, let's make sure we give you clear guidelines, staff support, we have consistent rules, and that if someone has a clear conflict of interest at the table, make sure that is disclosed to everybody in the process. Thank you.
I'm particularly excited about this question because my entire platform of having a more representative form of government is all about elevating and resourcing our community organizations to have a larger and a more powerful voice in our entire political decision-making system, right? That's really the premise of my entire campaign, is shifting the political power in this city from the hands of primarily developers and a lot of corporate interests, and putting it more into the hands of the actual communities. We have a lot of knowledge and on-the-ground knowledge about what we need and how, what it's like to live where we live, and we should have a much larger voice in affecting decisions that are going to impact our communities. I would agree that our neighborhood associations have some improvement. They have room for improvement in terms of actually being representative of the people who live here, right? And I think the reason for that is we don't have a political system that's particularly engaging, that feels responsive to people's needs. Young people don't feel represented or engaged by this system, so why are they going to show up to a neighborhood association meeting, right? Part of the goal of this entire campaign for me is to show people that there's an alternative. We can create a system that you can actually feel you can be a part of. We can create a system that actually creates a role for our communities in real decision-making processes. And shifting to a representative form of government where we have city council districts does a really good job of creating actual roles for neighborhood associations. They'd be one of many community roles. Community groups also need to have a seat at the table. Small business owners have to have a seat at the table. But across the board, when you have a more representative form of government, it makes it much easier to give neighborhood associations the resources that they need to run strong, vibrant organizations with good facilitation and draw in a more representative group of folks for every one of the neighborhoods in this city and have a more direct conduit to the folks who are representing you on council. So really, this is the premise of my campaign, is helping to create a better way, a better path for all the community groups within our city to have more direct access to decision-making and political power in City Hall. And it really has to start with the structure change that I was talking about earlier. We have to dismantle the commission form of government, shift to city council districts where we have representatives on council who are responsible to the people, and neighborhood associations will play a large role in that accountability. So, thank
Mr. Chairman, how much time for the wrap-up?
I'd say anywhere between 3 and 5 minutes.
I don't want to wear people out. How about 2 minutes?
Sure, go ahead. Okay.
So let me start again by thanking the Montville Neighborhood Association for hosting this conversation. Thank you all for coming out tonight. I know you have some other business you have to do as well, but appreciate the opportunity to engage in this conversation. I want to thank Julia DeGraw for throwing her hat in the ring. This is not the best of times to be in public service or to be a candidate. There's enormous headwinds and big challenges facing our city, and I think we should applaud everybody that decides to step up and that says, I have something to offer, and I want to acknowledge that. Look, for me, running for re-election, I think there's a couple of things I would ask you to consider. The first is, what have I accomplished? I have a website, nickfishforportland.com, and I've listed my record in great detail. All the things I've worked on and the people I've worked with. I urge you, if you have the time, to review that website and see whether I reflect your values. See whether the kinds of things I've been trying to do to improve our quality of life and support our homeless neighbors and get our sidewalks and streets safer and on align with your values. So I've posted my record. Number two, another way of evaluating us is to ask who stands with us in these campaigns. Who has publicly said that you represent my values and I support you? And I want to call out a few people that have not only supported me in this race, but have helped shape my platform. Around homelessness and housing, Israel Bayer, one of the founders of Street Roots, has not only publicly endorsed me, but helped shape my platform. There is no one doing better work in our community, shaping the concerns of people who do not have a home in this moral crisis we have called homelessness. On livability in parks, I'm very proud to have the support of Arlene Kimura, the co-chair of the East Portland Action Plan, and Linda Robinson, who's been a champion for parks in this area and further east. For police accountability, I have 2 warriors for justice who've endorsed me. Former Senator Abel Gordley, who's been fighting the good fight. You'll remember that she was the first African-American woman to serve in the state Senate, and she spent most of her time removing racist language from the state constitution. And Lou Frederick, our friend, State Senator Lou Frederick from Inner Northeast. Both of them have publicly supported my campaign. On the question of engaging neighborhoods and bringing people to the table, I'm proud that former Mayor Bud Clark has supported me. I'm the only candidate in this cycle that he's supporting. Tom Potter is supporting me and called me the other day and said he wanted to do some get out the vote activities and wanted to go door to door, and I'll take him up on it. And Commissioner Amanda Fritz, who is not only the architect of open and accountable elections, but has really been the great champion of our neighborhood system. They've all endorsed me. And then our singular progressive champion in this part of the city, Senator Jeff Merkley, has supported me. And Jeff stands shoulder to shoulder with me. I have listed a complete list on the website of all the organizations and trusted leaders who are supporting me. I would ask you to take the time to read our platforms, see who's standing with us, consider whether we match up with things you care about, and if you determine that Nick Fish aligns with your values, I'd be honored to have your vote. Thank you very much.
All right, so yeah, again, my name is Julia DeGraw. I'm running for Portland City Council, and I'm running against an incumbent, right? That's the thing, that's a real thing, and I think that explains a little bit about the long list of public endorsements we just got right there. But I have a track record, having grown up and lived here in the Portland area and having my entire career in the Portland area, fighting on behalf of people to make sure their voices are heard by decision makers, and fighting powerful interests and winning, right? We had the corporate, we won against Nestle, and I built a very broad coalition of groups in order to make that happen. And I want to bring an organizer's sense to City Hall. Over the last 10 years, we've had elected officials in this form of government that have allowed it to get as bad as it is, right? We are in the middle of a housing crisis. There was a lot of planning we could have done 10 and 20 years ago that could have avoided some of these worst outcomes we're experiencing right now. I'm hearing a lot of commitments right now to getting the re-jurisdiction of 82nd Avenue. That's great. That's one of the first ideas that I had when I wanted to run for public office was we need to take over these orphan highways and make them safe streets for our communities. I thought that on day one. That was one of the first ideas that I had. We need elected officials that are going to hit the ground running from the moment that they are elected to fight for the people and not uphold these structures and these governments that are very slow to change and really ineffective at addressing the root causes of our problems. And that's why I'm running. I know what it's like to work with a diverse group of groups and a diverse group of people who don't have to work with you, right? When you organize a coalition, no one's getting paid to work with you. They're working with you because they have a common shared interest and they believe that they have the power to win and to change. And I've proven that I can be trusted to fight for people and get results. So I realize it's a huge leap I'm asking folks to take, but it's 2018, Donald Trump is president, and Chloe Daly won against an incumbent last election cycle. Let's prove that that's not a one-off deal, that we can actually have people-powered candidates who are going to go in there and fight for us and get the change that we need and deserve, and the change that we've been waiting for a very long time. And I too have some endorsements. I've got the endorsement of Bill McGibbon, who is the founder of 350.org, the Sierra Club of Portland, or the Sierra Club of Oregon endorsed, as well as I got a green light from Basic Rights Oregon, and Skipper Osborne, who's the former president of the NAACP of Portland, and the PCC Faculty and Staff Union endorsed me really early on in this campaign because they believe that I'm the candidate who's going to fight for workers and for students. And I just want to finish by saying you can sign up for my campaign up here. I've got handouts. You can visit www.julia4pdx.com if you like what you're hearing. I'm going to be out there knocking on doors and sending folks out every weekend until the election. If you want to get involved, I'd love to have your help. So thank you.
Great. Can we just have one more round of applause for the wonderful I'm sure we would all love some more questions, but I'm sure you'd like to get out of here and maybe move on with the agenda tonight. So thank you again.
Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, guys.
Okay, we're a little bit behind schedule. We have another presentation though. Ms. Purcell.
Thank you for the extra time.
Sure. No problem. And this is PCC, Adult Basic Education and GED.
Hi, my name is Juliette Purcell, and I'm from Portland Community College, right up the street at 82nd and Division, the Southeast Campus. And I'm just here to talk to you for a few minutes about our Adult Basic Education program. So I and my other fellow teachers help students get their GEDs. And there's 4 different tests, and as you know, GED is high school equivalency. I have some flyers, so if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to pass them around.
I'll take it around.
Yeah.
It's my favorite.
I've been to a few different neighborhood association meetings, and this was cool to be able to see the city commissioner candidates, so thank you for that. But basically, trying to recruit students, and there are lots of people out there in the community who maybe did not finish high school. You might know that in the city, or not the city, the state of Oregon, that our graduation rate is currently 77%. And that's an improvement over the previous year, which the graduation rate was 75%. So we could do better. And I think too, the reason I came out to the community is because there's people in the community who maybe want their GED or need a GED or know somebody. The last meeting I went to, someone came up to me and said, well, my stepdaughter didn't finish high school, so let me have a flyer. And I was like, okay. But also, the state of Oregon has the goal of 2025 to have this goal called 40-40-20. I don't know if you've heard about this. Basically, the plan is to have everybody in the state of Oregon finish high school or get a GED. And the 40 is for 40% getting an associate's degree, or no, sorry, baccalaureate degree or higher, and then 40% associate's degree or certificate in a skilled occupation. So that would leave the other 20% stopping there at a high school diploma or GED, but all of them basically getting this milestone accomplished. Also, a statistic that I thought was interesting is by 2018, 63% of all U.S. jobs will require education beyond high school. So it tends to be that the higher the education you get, the more earnings you make, and also your chances for unemployment go down as you go up that kind of education ladder. But I think most of all, you know, what's most important about the program is helping people build their confidence. You know, it's self-esteem issues, helping kids with homework and just feeling like, you know, I can accomplish this. And you know, I always tell students, well, you should do your homework with your student or with your kids. We have great benefits in our program. We help students again prepare for those basic skills on the GED, but also reading, writing, and math skills that people just need for life. And we have upper and lower level classes. We have classes online. People can go at their own pace, and we're very forgiving. You can repeat the classes. You know, we're all about kind of second chances. And you can take the classes for free if you're on SNAP or Oregon Health Plan or a dislocated worker. We have a program for 16 to 21-year-olds called Yes to College that helps them pay for the classes and the tests. And just, you know, a lot of different benefits. Disability services, counseling. We have a food pantry, all kinds of things. And we like to help students, most of all, get beyond their GED and start college classes. So we have lots of scholarships available and lots of help and support. So I'm just trying to get the word out. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Yeah. What about the Gateway program? Is that still in existence?
Yes. So we also have a Gateway to College program that helps students get both a high school diploma and start doing college credit. And we work a lot. I think sometimes students choose one path or the other, the Gateway to College program or the GED program. Sometimes, if it doesn't work out in the Gateway program, they might come to our program and then go in, you know, like there's just so many different doors to go through. But that is a great program too.
Right. So they end up with some college credits
in
addition to a diploma.
Yes, and that is a great program. It is a really great program. So thank you. Any other, oh yeah.
Is your program basis solely for like this area? I live in Southwest is the reason I asked. And I own a nonprofit, and I would love to partner with you guys as I'm working with teens. And I actually have a teen at home right now. I'm in a crisis that I'm going to have to leave and go take care of. He's one of my clients.
Okay.
But this is definitely something I would like to. Are you the one that I will be speaking with?
Yeah, you know, well, Lee is actually the contact person. Maybe I'll touch base with you before I go. But
so yeah, the main question I guess is it solely for this area, or
no? So there's a program, an ABE program at each campus. So there's the Sylvania campus in Southwest. There's here Southeast in Cascade and Rock Creek.
Okay.
But I mean, you know, people live all over. They go to different places. So yeah, we could definitely chat. So yeah, no, that'd be great. Thank you. Any other questions or anything? Well, thank you so much for having me. Thanks. Take care. Thanks.
All right, and now courtesy of our land use and transportation.
Is Art still on here?
Yeah.
Great. So Art is a developer for a project he's going to talk to you about tonight.
I'm not that one.
You're not a developer. Okay. He'll introduce himself a little more, and he probably brought a couple of copies of so I'll take one to every table. And he wasn't able to make it to our land use meeting, so we wanted to make sure folks had an opportunity to hear about it.
Just so we know, we have people at home watching.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Art Duhan with Duhan Consulting and Design. I've been a designer in Portland for almost 20 years. This is a parcel of land that my clients had bought 2 years ago. Some of the improvements that are being required is transportation improvements to southeast Hoyt and southeast Irving. And that includes a half-street improvement on Hoyt, which is a gravel road and it dead ends. So we're basically improving the whole frontage on the north side of Hoyt, all the way to our property, which is at the dead end. Some of the items that or obstacles we've had to overcome is there is a 60-inch California redwood tree in the right-of-way that we had to basically bump out into the street and then put the driveway on the west side of it. So that's why the entrance to the site kind of zigzags around. There's a big fight about that tree being removed because it has some damage to it, and it's the property owner's responsibility if the tree falls. We had 3 different arborists make statements about the tree, and even though they said that the tree is in decline, the city arborist ruled that it was a perfectly fine tree. So if the tree does fall, you guys understand why it fell, because some of the roots were damaged due to some sewer laterals being placed underneath it. And it's not a native tree, so it's very odd where these trees are on that street. There's some other trees at that dead end that are in the right of way, and it's probably somebody that just thought, oh, let's plant some trees here, and not realizing that it's in the right of way. Because really, when they cleared some of the brush out, they thought the tree was on the property line, and found the property corners and said, oh, well, that's the city's tree, we don't need to worry about it. So that was one of the obstacles, and we started this 2 years ago, so we've been going on, hopefully within the next couple weeks we'll be submitting for building permits. The houses, they range from 1,200 square feet to 1,500 square feet. There's 3 styles. The first unit is facing Hoyt. It will be the building that gets all the restrictions put on it as far as the street frontage facade. It's got to be the 10-foot setback, 5-foot setback on the sides, 10-foot setback street facing, and it also has to have the pedestrian connection on it. The other units 2 through 11 are the same units, and these are all 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, or 4 bath. Each bedroom has its own bathroom, and then there's a powder room on the main floor. And they also have balconies for outdoor area, personal outdoor area. And then the last unit is 2 duplexes, which are the same, pretty much the same floor plans throughout, except for unit 1 that, because of its shape, we had originally, when we designed this, to have all the houses look like the unit 2. We were trying to go for size versus size of livability. And just the drive-in placement, it moved around. As you can imagine, if you're trying to avoid a tree, it moved like 3 or 4 different times. And with each time it moved, a new floor plan was created. So we're finally, since the public works permits are final, I don't know that they've been purchased yet, but they're in place. That gave us concrete locations to set the house. The price point, we started at 2 years ago, I think the price point, they were looking at $350. Now it's gone up. You can imagine the amount of interest that they've been paying. That's not necessarily what they wanted. They wanted something that was somewhat, I mean, this day and age, we don't know what affordable housing is, at least I don't. And part of the problem, and maybe I shouldn't go into this, but the time it takes to get a permit, it's, you know, I got a permit in Tillamook with this house that's in Rockaway City, in a volatile, it's in a flood zone. It's literally right on the beach. It took 2 weeks to get a building permit through Tillamook County. I would jump for joy if I could get a building permit in 2 weeks in the city of Portland. I've had other developments in the past 2 years permit cycle. So these are things that, you know, cause the pricing to go up, and that's where, as a designer and working with developers, that's where I see the housing crisis is. If we could free that up, then and maybe you can help address that.
I have some ideas.
So that is what we're proposing.
Can you talk about talk about what the zoning is, what you normally would be allowed, and what
The
you're doing
zoning-
to get, and what
yeah.
you're doing to get the extra unit?
So the zoning is R2.5, which is basically for every 2,500 square feet you could do, I think it's I haven't brushed up on it. I used to know this stuff like the back of my hand.
Isn't it multi-dwelling?
It's a multi-dwelling zone.
So it's R2. Or
It's
2.5 is a
it's-
single dwelling zone.
It's a 2.5 multi-dwelling. It's kind of, yeah, it's sandwiched in between R2 and R5. It's kind of, it's mysteriously placed somewhere in the.
So are you doing a land division then?
We're not doing a land division.
R2.5 is a single dwelling
This will
zone?
be a condo project.
Uh-huh.
So single-family homes sold as condos.
In a multi-dwelling
In a
zone.
multi-dwelling
I
zone.
think it's R2.
It's,
So-
it says 2.5 from our early
So
assistance.
then you need a
review.
land division.
Nope.
Unless you're doing a planned development.
No, well, some of the information that was conducted in the early assistance review was incorrect, and I had to correct the planner. So we're getting 15 units by way of amenity bonuses, and that's basically if it's over 3 bedrooms. There's a percentage, I think it's like 20% of the houses have to be over 3 bedrooms, 20% for larger closets, 20% for kitchens with a square footage of, I think, 53 square feet of cabinetry or drawers, and some safety issues, community, like door locks, special door locks, special window locks. And I think that covers that as far as what we're expected to do. We're not doing the conventional curb sidewalk on the site. We're doing like a shared driveway approach. So we're using planer or pervious pavers to reduce the impervious surface area. So the water will be treated through the driveway and mitigated into the system. We are also treating the stormwater runoff on the roofs. We're putting those into dry wells, and I can't think of anything else that we're doing especially. We're providing bicycle parking that's required. I think it's like 15 short-term, 17 long-term, or vice versa.
Do we have a couple or any questions from folks? This is kind of our, so we don't have any right to compel them to do anything, but we do have the right to hear this presentation, to hear about the project, and make suggestions or ask them questions about it, and we can certainly follow up later. This 10-minute format is not ideal to have a deeper discussion about this, but if there is a question or two that anyone has, that would be welcome.
Well, great. If
Well, I can make a comment though about zone, permits. I was involved in getting an occupancy permit for an organization out on 122nd. And you can't get the same story
It's
twice.
very difficult.
Nobody seems to
Frustrating.
know, well, you know, call this person,
Yeah.
call that person.
I've had one in North Portland where, it's an R1 zone, it's on a corner. Just across the street is within 500 feet of the transit line. We're 20 feet, we're in a pedestrian connection. We're 200 feet shy of the light rail. And the site is not really, 6 units are basically, it's zoned for, you can't do less than 6 units. So we're maximizing the city's requirement, but parking's an issue. Can't get parking. So I had to file an adjustment, and then we tried to get an exception through PBOT. They denied it. So we had to go through the adjustment, and PBOT is delaying. We've had to extend the adjustment over 120 days just this last week. And that's like, I have building plans ready December of 2016. So it's frustrating because we don't get all the information. And we tried to go through a land use, and in the land use early assistance review, we found that it was a green street, so there was even more requirements placed on that nobody knew. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll try to move right along as quickly as possible. Updates from officers and committee chairs. As chair, I've been going to a lot of city debates, a lot of events around the neighborhood, 82nd Avenue. The 82nd Avenue group has also been meeting to try to, as you've heard, try to get the city to take over 82nd Avenue from the state. We did hold our outreach meetings. We're kind of settling. It still varies on third Sundays. We've been working on the newsletter. We're hoping to have out our second newsletter here soon. We've also been working with a wonderful neighbor who's been putting together a history project. We have filed to participate in the 82nd Avenue of Roses Parade, which will be on April 28th. We hope to have all of you out there. And we're still working on a cleanup. We thought we had some solidified plans. I think that's gotten a little bit delayed now. So we are looking for more volunteers to help organize the neighborhood cleanup. And I wanted to put in a pitch. Madison High School is having an art fair on April 28th and 29th. That's the same weekend as the 82nd Avenue Parade. And April 24th, the last day to register to vote or to change and update your registration. So please, people make sure April 24th, last day to register to vote in the May primary, which will be on May 15th, the day after our next meeting. So I think that's all I had for now. Land use?
Oh, sure. I don't really have anything formal. The big project that we're working on right now is just a kind of quick thing that we're excited about turning around. This Saturday kicks off Design Week Portland, and as part of that, the Bureau of Transportation is doing a kind of Portland-only parking day. It's something that we take part internationally with in the fall, but it's something that PBOT's making available this spring as well. And so basically we are going to do a small installation right in front of Wix Insurance at 81st and Stark on Saturday, and we're going to take over 2 parking spaces and have some fun activities and some seating and just kind of create this little parklet for the day. And we're going to talk about that later in the board meeting, but it'll be a fun thing if you guys are out and about on Saturday. Feel free to come by, and it's going to be mid-60s and supposedly not rainy, so that'll be exciting. Other than that, we're working on, there are 2 really big projects that the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability is taking to the Planning and Sustainability Commission here this spring. The Better Housing by Design, which I talked about last time a little bit, about multi-dwelling zone rewriting. And now they've just come out with the new draft of the residential infill project, which is all about some significant changes to the single dwelling zones, or to most areas of single dwelling zoning in the city, which both of which have a lot of opportunity for increased density and kind of getting the scale of new housing that we need in the city, given how many people are coming. And those are things that I think, we're going to want to talk a little bit more in detail about and figure out how we would like to weigh in. We can certainly submit letters. If there's something in particular we want to say, where anyone can go to the commission meetings, and they're having a couple of hearings on both, I think. So those are some kind of big policy issues coming up. Otherwise, we're really focusing in on kind of more physical things that we want to do in terms of murals, kind of making our place better in certain ways. Like, how do we want to partner with organizations that are already connecting people with artists, doing intersection paintings? Are there projects that we want to take on? And then Kate Walker is here in the back, and she presented in, I think, February to the group about a slower Stark and limiting the speed on Stark Street between 82nd and 76th. And she's going to be bringing that to Peabody, and I'm hoping to use our parking day installation as kind of a last push to get people to sign up for that and let people know that this effort's underway, because I think it's a really great project that she instigated, and we're excited to work with her on it. So. Yep. Oh, and our next meeting is the fourth Wednesday. I think that's April 25th, and we're usually meeting at Portland Metro Arts, and I'll send out an announcement. What was that again?
April 25th.
Is that a Wednesday? Hopefully remembering that correctly. But it's the fourth Wednesday. Metro. Sorry, John? Go ahead. Yeah, the 25th.
So for public safety, it's been a pretty busy month. I've been helping facilitate neighborhood watches, mostly through the crime prevention coordinator with ONI, Office of Neighborhood Involvement. I've gotten lots of emails lately about crime, burglaries, other theft issues. Been going to those neighbors' houses and talk to them one-on-one and giving them, ways to report. Talk to the city about their problems and hopefully get those addressed. Any resources I can provide for them, just kind of reassuring that we're listening and we care about what's going on. There's also a letter that the mayor sent out about police funding. It has to do with the current way that they're actually going to be proposing funding for the city. So I'm just going to read it. I don't necessarily agree with how they're cutting other parts of the city, like parks, for example, on how to fund this, but I'm just going to read it. So it's from the mayor. It goes, "To our constituents, you are receiving this letter because you have reached out or had interactions with the mayor's office around public safety. Public safety is also our top priority, and below is how you can advocate for this effort. As of the 2018-2019 budget season, is well underway. The mayor's office would like to encourage our constituents with public safety concerns to give testimony in support of Portland Police Bureau's budget request. Public safety in our community is in jeopardy. The Bureau is requesting funds for 93 additional sworn officers and 9 additional non-sworn professional positions. These requests support the mayor's key priorities, increasing public safety and police accountability, maintaining the city's critical infrastructure, and enhancing livability. The Police Bureau's request for additional ongoing resources will advance the Bureau's mission and goals to provide 21st century policing services to support organizational excellence and inclusion, and to rebuild police units so they can better deliver community policing to all residents. Staffing within the Portland Police Bureau has been a critical issue for the Bureau for many years, and there are several factors that impact this issue: recruiting and hiring, attrition, and number of officers. There are fewer officers in the Bureau as there were a decade ago. Despite a 10% increase in Portland's population, the request would increase the number of officer positions by approximately 10%, on par with Portland's growth. The Portland Police Bureau continues to face challenges in patrol staffing, which has led to declining response times in the last 5 years. Total 911 call volumes have increased by over 22%. These calls include a 97% increase in stolen vehicle calls, 64% increase in unwanted persons calls, and a 32% increase in disorder calls. Without an increase in staffing, the response time for these calls will only grow, threatening the safety of all Portlanders. We urge constituents with any public safety concerns to voice their support for this proposed budget. Your voice in this conversation is essential, and we urge our constituents to either submit a written testimony, contact city commissioners, or attend one of the upcoming community budget events. And the next one is on April 17th at 6:30 at Roosevelt High School. And the address is 6941 North Central Street, 97203. And you can take the 44 or the 75 bus line to get there. So that's that. So I'm going to be having a city committee meeting here soon. I'll be throwing that out. So look for that. And yeah, just basically that's what I'm working on. So. And there's a meeting with the mayor on Friday, the 13th. It's this thing called The Conversation. I'll be attending that as well. There's also the State of the City, which is on Thursday, the 12th. I'll be there too. So that's what I'm
in
up
the
to.
morning, right?
Yeah, it's like yeah, it's
an impossible thing to get to if you have a day job.
But I have the day off, so
Nice.
it's sweet. Works for me. But I will be there, so that's what I'm up to right now.
Awesome. I'm Olive with the Southeast Uplift Delegate. We had our Southeast Uplift Board meeting, and one of the things that we discussed as the board was the upcoming budget, the community budgeting forums. Molly Mayo, who is the director of Southeast Uplift, wanted to appeal to the board, and we had a discussion subsequently on the persistent underfunding of East Portland. So Southeast Uplift is the district coalition for the Southeast, but East Portland is our neighbor, and we work with them on projects. They have been perennially underfunded, and right now, of course, we're facing 5% budget cuts, so the city is looking to tighten its belt. But as a neighbor to Southeast Uplift, or as a neighbor to EPNO, we want to push the city to increase their funding, which has been ONI's recommendation. Wheeler is supportive, Udaly is supportive. There are some other commissioners who are sort of not really committed one way or another, but we're hoping to use the community budgeting forums to push for them to have that increased funding, which is appropriate to the size and the population density. That was something that if people are stopping by also April 17th, Roosevelt High School, 6:30, it'd be really great to voice your support so that they know the community is supportive. Other things coming, I know that our cleanup was unfortunately delayed just because of the size and the interest. So if you want to get rid of stuff early, our neighbors at Tabor, both Tabor North and South, have done a joint cleanup anyways. They're moving that forward. So it's around the same time that ours would have been anyway, so it's good that ours are staggered now. Theirs is at Mount Tabor Middle School, April 28th from 9 to 1 p.m. We'll be sending that out in an email just to make sure we can support them. But if you want to be able to drop off, it's just a general cleanup trash. You can grab them there, April 28th, or you can wait for ours coming up, which will be closer. Last but not least, and then reporting back from the subcommittee on the Housing and Houselessness Forum, we've been working closely with PCC in order to, the events planners, to be able to get the lowest cost. And unfortunately, the original date that we set for early of May isn't going to work with their events. They've got a lot going on that weekend, and they really want to host the forum, so we're looking to push the date back a little bit, closer to the 19th, but I'm waiting for their commitment, so we'll have that date out really soon.
Wonderful.
Not right now. Thanks.
I have a little bit for parks because I have been in contact with the city for a project that was brought to me from a community member who's been doing the local Food Not Bombs at the Montevilla Park every Wednesday. You should definitely go check that out. But they have interest in trying to have a localized recycling site in a public space. And so I'm looking to get input from the community as well as participants, volunteers, things like that. But the idea is to try to finance, either through becoming a fiscal sponsor or something similar, a plastic processing machine that you can take waste plastic that's currently not being shipped anywhere, because we were shipping it to China, now it's just sitting, and turning it into something that you can sell either as 3D printer filament or directly 3D print things like net pots for community gardens. They have a lot of really good ideas, so I'd like to try to funnel money their way and maybe people. And I'll probably put up an event very soon for a meeting where we can talk about that. You want to look at our website for that. Thank you.
Great. So I think that takes us through all the updates. And finally, membership comments. Would anybody like to have some comments or something? Go ahead.
I'm from the Ombudsman program, and we desperately need ombudsmen in the east side of Portland. And ombudsmen are people who go into nursing homes, assisted living, residential care facilities, memory facilities, and they're advocates for the people who live there. And the ideal volunteer would have time during the week, generally about 4 hours a week. And there's extensive training in order to do this. And you make a huge difference in people's lives. I made a list. I just wanted to tell you some of the things. I've done it for 15 years in 3 different states. And there were medication errors. People weren't getting enough food. People had to wait an hour in order to go to the bathroom. They were getting discharged because they had a oddball family that the nursing home didn't like to deal with. I've seen residents with bugs crawling over them, and they can't get out of bed. People sitting around with nothing to do. Their friends aren't allowed to visit because of some rumor that their friends are trouble. Someone whose father his son wouldn't give him any money because he didn't want him to drink, so he had no spending money. But these are the kinds of problems that we solve. We get quite a bit of training, and I'm going to hand out, I've got a couple handouts. If this isn't for you, then maybe you know someone who would be good at this, and you could hand it off to them. You make changes for individuals. A lot of times it affects everybody in the facility when things get better, and we even make changes to state law. We do that. I worked in high tech at Tektronix and Intel. I knew nothing about facilities, and I've learned over the years. And through our training, I have a really good supervisor here in Portland who is a lawyer and has a lot of experience in facilities. And so I become very knowledgeable, and I can help my family and my friends who go into long-term care. The small handout that I have for you there also has Medicaid and Medicare fraud on the back. So, any questions? Somebody asked me once.
Is your contact information over there?
Actually, Lene would be the person that you would contact.
Okay.
Somebody asked me once, they said, well, how can you help people in nursing homes? Don't they all have dementia and they're confused and they don't know what they want? Well, the truth is that if somebody has dementia and they're confused, they have good days, they can communicate with you, you just have to be patient. So that was an education for some people. And old people are really, really interested and interesting, and they're really, really grateful when somebody comes in, talks to them, and tries to help them.
Well, thank you very much.
I have a quick question. So you said you're looking for an East Portland specific volunteer.
Yes.
Is right now East Portland underserviced?
Yes.
Okay. How intensely underserviced?
I don't really have exact numbers. I know there's an assisted living in this area that has nobody. I know in some of the neighboring areas, they have nursing homes, memory care facilities that have nobody. Overall, statewide, about 60% of the facilities are covered. I would guess in East Portland it's less than that. I spent a lot of time in the adult care homes in East Portland, and that was real interesting. I've been in about 100 of them, and all kinds of things in there that you need. I have a question.
How do residents know about the ombudsman program?
The way that residents know about the program is there's a big poster, and they talk about it a lot. In fact, they call you, oh, there's my ombudsman. You know, you're the person that they should feel that they can talk to.
When you say there's a big poster, where is that?
Oh, there's a big poster by law that's supposed to be in the facility. So.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Anyone else? Yes.
Yes, I'm Grant from Brentwood, Darlington. I just wanted to let everybody know that we're hosting a candidate debate on this coming Saturday from 10 o'clock until 1 o'clock. I know Julie is going to be there, and a variety of the other candidates for the other open seat are going to be there as well. So if any of you care to come, please join us.
Great.
Well, thank you. All right, anything else?
Where was that? Oh, it's at the Gathering Church in Lentz at 88th and Woodstock.
Great, well, I don't see any other comments, so I think we're going to jump right into our board meeting here. Thank you, everyone, for coming. You can stay if you'd
We
like
have
to.
like 7 of the 20 is plenty signs yet. I've got stands, I've got signs. Take one for your parking strip, please.
Did we want to break for a minute?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
Okay, so just 2 minutes, right?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so. Yeah. All right, so it is now 8:16. We are starting the board meeting. I'd like to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
So, and then new business, I can just bring up new business, right?
Okay, you'd like to add it?
I have a couple of things. I want to talk about the Mana Village Festival that Creative Science School is putting on May 20th. And then I have a proposal for the approval of the parking bay installation. And then the legal fees, it's already on there.
Okay. I move we approve the agenda with the changes suggested by Amanda.
Second.
Second by Olivia. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? Unanimous. Okay, do we have a minutes? We got the March minutes.
Yeah, they had been sent out and I made some copies. Where did I put that? They go there? They shouldn't be. Can you come back to that? I may not know if I
Sure.
got it yet.
Yeah, we can come back to that. All right, moving right along. The addition on the agenda was to add Mana Village
Monto Village.
and the parking day to new business. New business.
Oh, here we go.
Okay, great.
Oh, I've got them, yeah. So these were, I only have 3 copies. These were sent out by Jonathan and Briar Rose last month for our general and then board meeting.
Do we need to worry about the general? Is that part of the deal?
I'm gonna write maybe some just edits like of spelling. And then,
Well, yeah, that's, my name is.
oh, so, Adrian, that's
Yeah,
what we
that's
were
all.
laughing about, so, yeah. And then Brian Staffkey is wrong somewhere. So I'll turn in a couple of.
Sure, edits are fine.
So the name's corrected and edits.
Okay. All right, I have no other additions.
Great.
Someone like to move to approve the minutes?
moved, oh, you did. Second?
No, she just presented them.
Oh,
Yeah.
I moved to approve the minutes as edited.
Okay.
Yeah.
A second? All right, any discussion? All
I
in
like
favor?
that there's a
All in
bullet
favor?
point that just says Montevilla had a cowboy band in 1910. With like no other.
All in favor? All right, it's unanimous.
I heard it. Must be true.
Okay, any update on board vacancies? We do have another resignation by Briar Rose as a board member. So, once again, we do need to be reaching out to the community. It would be great to have somebody from the south eastern portion, around Berrydale Park or in what used to be Greenway. So, something to keep in mind. Please people look around, ask around, consider how good they would be to work with. Okay?
So, can we have like 2 people commit to reaching out, or like, because we always say like, oh, we've got these spaces and now we really need to bring some more bodies on, and we don't want just bodies, we want to be strategic about it.
It's nice that the block parties are free. Might I suggest we throw an event? Try to get some people.
Can we get the first block party?
Sure.
What do you mean, block parties, you just ask for them on your block?
Well,
But I
the
mean,
permit process
like-
is free now, so.
That's what he's saying.
I think he's using it as a recruiting tool.
Yeah.
As an outreach event.
Sure. You can bottom line that, thank you.
Yeah, right.
I would love to have the
Does
first.
this require lots of beers?
Yes, it does.
I got some friends who
It'd be
could
great
play
to have the first
music.
block party in the city.
We can get pies and
Yeah.
say we'll pie like board members for, you know,
Yes.
stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what I was
We can
thinking.
do fundraising.
I mean, I was gonna say, I made the suggestion that outreach meeting dunk tank, so maybe this
Yeah.
is really where it happens.
The Montevilla Co-op has done that in the past at the street fair, but maybe we can.
Okay, so I would hope all board members can commit to at least speaking with one person. And if they don't turn out to be good,
Yeah, I can do that, it's fine.
So you're thinking sort of,
I think so. Looks correct. Any other comments on that?
well, I'm just wondering if we would utilize Facebook and email at all, just for a quick one-off email to just solicit some, interest, say, come by the next board meeting, let us know, maybe you haven't been involved in the past, but there could be interest out there that has sort of tapped out. But maybe this is a great time for them to reinstate interest. I can bottom line writing, drafting up some language, just send out an email.
Okay,
That'd be
can
great.
you, Amanda and I work with that, work doing that?
Yeah, I can send it to you guys.
Thank you.
Okay, anything on that issue? Moving along, spring cleanup. That's on hold for now.
I'm not sure.
What's the issue behind that?
The original location wasn't big enough for the expected turnout.
Parking and turning
Yeah.
around and all that stuff?
Yeah, so, cleanup?
Okay.
Yeah, delayed. Looking for volunteers. Homeless forum, you wanna take this out?
Sure, what was it?
Homeless forum, budget request?
Right, so the homeless farm budgeting, so PCC has been really interested in helping out. The only problem is that was contingent on delaying things a bit. That also was fine though, because one of the originally requested day was just gonna be a lot more, because on Sunday you have to pay for security, and I just don't really think it's a good use of board money to be making it on the most expensive day, where we can just change it to Saturday, which is equally accessible and less money. The total cost right now the estimated cost for the forum in the hall, in the Mount Tabor Hall at PCC is at $370. With working with PCC, especially if they have some people who are interested in joining like us in helping develop the forum, that could actually reduce costs, but right now there's no clear interest, so the cost sets at about $370. And for an estimated cost for materials and, do you have? Oh yeah, the estimated cost for materials plus food, making food available, because we're asking people to come around the lunchtime with a housing and health systems forum. I thought I would be a little inconsiderate to not consider that people might be hungry and make it easier for them to come by if there's at least a partial meal there. So I've estimated about $130, which brings the estimated cost right now at $500 for the forum. Like I said, I'm working really hard to get some of that food for free donated, and as well bring the usage fees down on the hall. So ideally, we're not going to use the totality of $500, but that's just at least going to make us comfortable, be able to make us move forward quickly.
What's the capacity of that space?
I had it written down, but I don't actually have it right now. It meets our needs about like 200, but under 200. So it's not. Yeah, I don't have the exact.
Because we had like 150 last time and they sold out and it was problematic.
Yeah.
Is that definitely going to be large enough?
I mean, it'll be large enough for our purposes unless for some reason it's super popular. I tried to hit the 150 marker and above, which it is comfortably above. But if more than 200 people come, I don't know what we would do with spillover. Yeah, we haven't really workshopped that right now, but mostly because I just worked to find the largest facility available in the area.
Is that over at the campus here?
The PCC at Mount Tabor Hall.
Mount Tabor Hall.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's where where state legislators were.
Yeah, it's a really flexible space too. So we could have chairs so that people are kind of sitting audience style, or we could have breakout tables. So either way, the space could be like maximized if it's under peopled. And if for any reason the list of the registration is much higher than expected, we could clear all furniture and we could reorganize the space to maximize it. But unfortunately, don't have any hard numbers on that.
So are you thinking it's more of a listening event, or is it more of a let's sit at tables and talk through some stuff?
Yeah,
both.
We're talking to some facilitators from ONI and the housing bureaus who are interested in what I'm interested in is a kind of more dialogue-based form. That said, there are a list of panelists now who are getting back to me, especially as I got the date zoned in, that are interested in just being able to debrief with some information. So what I imagined was panels so that everyone can hear the basic information, the basic pitch, but that then we'd have these facilitated breakout groups to bring the conversation to a more human scale. And so that's what I'm talking with the PCC person on, is a way that we can organize the room to have those breakout conversations happen so people can be heard, but then still have it kind of organized in a way so it's not just maddening chaos of everyone talking to each other. There's still the panelists who are experts in this and have information that we want. So it's split right now in 2 parts. Yes.
Two questions, I suppose. With regard to PCC's involvement, I remember reading the other day that something like 30% of community college students are at risk for houselessness and 60% are food insecure. So perhaps it's a good idea to try to leverage student government's involvement because they should be addressing those kinds of issues. And they're supposed to be accountable to the student body. And they have a lot of money, actually.
We know people in student government?
I think I might. Yeah.
Cool.
And then the other thing.
Will you pique their interest for me?
Yeah, is it ADA at Tabor?
Yeah, sure, that's ADA.
Have you thought about just charging people like $5 or something like that? So it can help pay for it.
Yeah, I hadn't considered charging people though, just because I didn't want to discourage involvement.
You can say it's still,
It could be optional donation, sure, but
Yeah,
I mean,
can we consider something like that? Something,
like
a
nobody
voluntary
can turn away.
donation or a donation box or something like that for participants.
Because that would be
yeah,
good.
to keep us up.
Make sure PCC is open to that.
Okay, I'll talk to PCC about that.
Sometimes
Sometimes there's restrictions on the place.
What was the tax?
And if you're not tight with East Gleason, I could talk with their owner about food. Or the new bakery, Resin Bakery.
Dresses are open again? Okay, cool. I really like them.
That she was going to make sure PCC didn't have a problem if we were asking for donations.
Oh, okay.
So like sliding scale, nobody turned away kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the events planner is going to be getting back to me so I can make sure to add that to the question.
Okay, great.
Any other questions for the space though, before she gets back to me?
Are you shooting for a date?
Yeah, I mean, May 19th right now, it's still tentative, but it is looking really good. That was the one that she recommended. But she was double checking just because at the end, she was saying the end, springtime, there's been a bunch of stuff in the works for a while here, so the spaces are pretty taxed.
I got one more thing. This is also for like outreach too. Would you be interested in a fundraiser to draws more attention to the event too, could help subsidize some of the cost.
A fundraiser for the event?
Yeah,
I hadn't considered that, no, you recommend that?
yeah, I recommend it. It'd be a great way to bring attention to the cause.
Like what?
Just, I don't know, like something where, you know, the board could be present, like something like we were mentioning, like maybe we can buy like a dunk tank for free or something, you know, like.
We're not gonna lean on the dunk tank every event.
We should, though.
We could, easy peasy, Gleason does do fundraising nights in the past, right, the MNA actually.
Oh, uh-huh.
So they'll just donate a portion of the proceeds and you could have something at their bar, or I don't know.
Yeah, it's just, you know, maybe we can talk to other businesses around here if they would be interested, you know, in like, you know, helping out, you know, just.
So maybe there's that double ask, food and or support, financial support.
Yeah, so, you know, just, that's.
Yeah, I'd be willing to help with that.
And then you can have them sponsor or something like that, and then it would bring, you know, attention to that too. So.
I think we're also talking about going around to businesses for the newsletter. We're talking about a business directory or advertising potentially in the future, so maybe that we can dual track it at the same time, multitask it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. We can finally get those emails going anyways.
Great, well, I want to get this budget, I would like to approve the budget request. I know it's a ballpark, and I know we can work on other things to draw the cost down, so I definitely don't want anything to get held up, because we haven't approved the budget yet for it, so I would move to approve the $500 for the forum.
Yeah, and I'll second that. And I'd like to help, you know, any way that I can raise funds for that, you know, so, you know, like advise us.
Perfect. Cool. Talk to you on that. Develop a little strategy.
Cool.
UCC sounds like a great partner, and I really appreciate your work that you've done on this. I am a little concerned about the maximum capacity issue, because that is the maximum capacity we had last summer, and we completely exceeded it with pre-sale free tickets, and that was a deep concern for a lot of folks.
I will say though, that was also writing right off the back of the resolution, where people were coming specifically to voice concern about the resolution. I am hoping now that things are less contentious and this is community oriented in its response, that we're gonna have less, yeah, but you're right, I mean, I would also like, I would like as many people to come as well. So I'll get a more discerning answer on that.
Especially if we're doing tables, like to how much does that reduce the capacity?
Yeah,
I'll get to know.
With talking to them on tables, I'll prioritize that in the conversation and get a more exact capacity so we can reassess as quickly as possible if we think it'll be.
It is a great partnership though.
Check it.
And the partnership would be reduced too if they want to like basically support me in developing the facilitation, which would be not only awesome to partner with them on developing the content of the panel, but then it would also just reduce costs, which would be great.
Yeah.
But I'll make sure to prioritize that.
Yeah, we have the same bank.
Okay, is there any other discussion on this topic? We have a motion and second. All in favor?
I'm abstaining.
Okay. We have 5 in favor. No. John seconded.
We start offering free food, see, we might get a lot of people coming in.
5 in favor, none opposed, 1 abstention. Next issue, newsletter. I was just going to throw out $100 for maximum printing costs for the newsletter and any other associated costs.
So,
I guess it just has to be.
So we could approve that, and then that would be money that we get reimbursed through at Southeast Uplift's outreach budget, correct?
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
And, I mean, I'm wondering if we could use some of that outreach budget for our material, printing, and other things.
That'd be awesome.
That'd be nice.
So, I mean, let's always remember that that's a pot of money that we have available to us.
Use it or lose it.
So you're asking for 100?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll move that we front $100 for the newsletter printing.
I second it.
Any other discussion? All in favor? 5, 0, and 1. Abstained. Okay. 82nd Avenue Roses Parade. We don't need anything for that. We already have a banner. outreach materials and stuff like that. Just consider please coming. Amanda already turned me down. So come march with me. I'll have a lot of family out. I'll have a lot of family with me.
Oh, the 8-second. Okay.
That was good. Okay, and now Jonathan, Precious Plastic Processing Program.
Oh, so pretty much what I wanted to be able to accomplish tonight, I was hoping Russell might be here, but I don't think he would make it. But I wanted to preliminarily request to take it on as a fiscal sponsorship and look into what that would mean, because even if it weren't necessarily this group of neighbors, this was actually something I wanted to do anyway, and they so happen to be doing it already. As in they already have equipment and they have certain things that already are covered by other people involved. So this would moreover be somewhat of a liaison relationship with the public space, because partially their issue is storage and where to put the stuff and how much thing can we handle. So the entire apparatus fits inside of a shipping container. It's got multiple sections and you can actually build them up on top of each other if you need to. There's a lot of really cool designs on their website. And I know that there is a shipping container company that's desperately trying to offload a bunch of them from the port of Portland because the longshoremen moving out, they're no longer used. So I feel like it's opportune to try to ask the city to do something with that in a public park and take money and put it into that and process plastic in the neighborhood and turn it into fun things. So this would be a request to preliminarily say yes to being a fiscal sponsorship to that kind of program.
So taking kind of oddball plastic that doesn't go into your street recycling.
No, but taking this, well, that stuff too, but taking the things that would be recycled because currently they're just landfill because they're not shipping it anywhere, even though they're shipping it to China. Yeah, ever since 2 years ago. Yep.
China's actually not taking it anymore in the plastics right now. It's actually treating critical mass. I don't know if
Who's not taking it?
China's not taking our trash anymore. And actually a lot of our plastics, when it's single stream, it's actually really
Are
difficult.
we charging a tariff on them now?
The tariff wars, yeah, actually.
Yeah,
really
yeah.
intense, definitely. But so what's frustrating with
I always
single stream
notice.
plastics, when we have plastics all mixed together in one, is that they're actually not immediately turned back into plastics, but they're usually melted down, usually for some more industrial grade plastics. So they don't, the myth that your water bottle becomes a water bottle again was exactly a myth. So what Precious Plastics offers the communities, I think, a kind of more grassroots answer to a plastic crisis, because I work at Columbia River Keeper, and we're honestly not seeing any top-down solutions to the plastic. So the idea being that we kind of need community momentum in order to, I think, instigate more creative changes. I would be really interested. I've seen this, of the plastic sort of filtering model in other cities. And I've also just seen how cute, they can make cute little bowls and stuff, and it could be a fundraising opportunity. Sorry, they're cute. And I mean, that grabs people's attention for sure. It obviously grabbed mine.
But my question is, okay, so you get all the plastic put in the shipping container, then how does it get to somewhere where it's actually being refined or?
No, the machine comes in, is stored in the shipping container.
Okay.
The machine would live in the community.
And it makes things.
It would end up as some sort of plastic at the end.
And or you sell it as filament to people who will make things with it. So it's also a revenue stream, and you could do things like employ members of the community who are currently unemployed and having trouble getting jobs. That kind of thing works. Additionally, net pots are very expensive, but you can do really awesome things with them, like have hydroponic gardens that are non-recirculating, so you can use parts for that kind of stuff.
Sorry, what's a net pot?
It's a plastic pot like you plant plants in, but it's $3 a pop because they're made with heavy-duty plastic. So it's polyethylene. And this is turning polyethylene back into something useful. So like that model would open up a lot of production in other ways, because I don't know if you ever seen fleet farming, but I mentioned it a few times in the chat, but it's a program that a friend of mine in Florida had started where people lease out their lawn space for growing space, and they all have a CSA where all this stuff is harvested and they share it. Pretty good.
So I'm going to be the Debbie Downer and say that manufacturing and production is a prohibited use in open space zones. So the location being in parks seems problematic.
That's fair. I think it gets around that by being self-contained.
No, it doesn't.
It's not open containers how you can do that. Store waste.
Well, can we deal with the red tape on the other end?
Sure.
I'm
I
wondering
deal with it right now.
what the ask is. Is it just a letter of support for the idea at the moment? Is it
Or
a
we
letter
would
to
be the
the city
fiscal
of Portland?
body that would handle fundraising and all that, or handle the money.
Yeah, what's kind of confused on that too.
So fiscal sponsorship as is defined for 501c3 means we would allocate a budgetary consideration to them from whatever funding we had. We'd say that for this period you get this much money in installments or you get one lump sum, that kind of thing, but it is not necessarily like an extended financial relationship. You can put your own limits on it. So if you did say like, okay, let's see what are you missing? You could itemize that cost and then just do it that way. So it's moreover just a documented point of contact that you have with the person or organization that it goes on record and it's part of your taxes at the end of the year, that kind of thing. So it's a documented thing rather than donation where you just need their tax ID and you give it away. So if they actually, it's also, it can be an investment. It can turn into a 501. It's actually similar to what happened with the Monteville Jazz Festival. They became their own 501 after fiscal sponsorship through the neighborhood association.
Fiscal sponsorship usually means that we're going to be the body that takes their donations and keeps them in a separate fund because we have the nonprofit status.
It means both.
Not necessarily that we're giving them money.
It means both because you have to put it on your taxes and expense. That's the only thing. Just saying.
Even though we don't pay tax.
That you file.
Yep, the 990.
Yeah, but you wouldn't do the 990 postcard if you had a fiscal sponsorship that big. So there's like amounts. It depends. I'm assuming it'd be more than $1,000. But
I would like to personally see like a plan, like by them first.
Okay.
Before I vote to approve anything, because I just don't want to go into it and say, yeah, I'm all for this, but I want to see like, something specific.
No, that's great. I want to do this before we met, so I can take back consideration from the board and be like, we have to do this.
Yeah.
I'm supportive of this issue too, but I'd like to see more.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't want to add anything more to Amanda, but maybe if you could kind of,
Provide examples.
Yeah, work out where an example of how you could get around these land use.
And I would also like to see maybe like one or two, maybe 3 references, like showing like that what they're doing, like what it's going to create and things like that. Other organizations they're willing to work with, just a couple other things to show that they're connected to the community.
Oh, the people themselves.
Or what they've work
What they've
that
accomplished.
what they've accomplished.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to see like a pattern. So.
Shipping garbage across the world is crazy, so it'd be
I think
great
you
to have a
definitely
local
got
solution
a
that
majority support.
That'd be great, yeah.
So we'd like to see some more.
didn't have
Sounds
such a
good.
great.
Thanks for bringing this up.
Yeah.
Okay, new business.
Sure, so we got our final invoice from our attorney, and we have 2 kind of paths that we're exploring in terms of, we have opened a claim with our insurer, and our initial $2,500 is what they actually require for a deductible, so they are potentially paying the rest. However, the city council back, I think in 2006, had funded a legal fund for neighborhood associations for this exact kind of circumstance, and we've got a proposal in to them, and so we're working with Southeast Uplift to figure out if we're going to ask. I think the plan right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, is well, I don't know what the plan is, but we're either going to ask, I think we're asking the city for the whole amount, but we're also going to probably leave that claim open just in case there's anything additional. So we should, between those 2 sources, be able to recoup our initial $2,500 retainer and cover any additional expenses. However, while we're working that out, we do have this outstanding balance that we owe Margaret, and I would really like to close that loop. It is $1,545.47, so $1,545. And Molly has, helped us with the proposal, and so we are actively moving forward on figuring out the best path for that.
And with this proposal, she was working with Paul Leisner to develop the language so that, we're within the scope of what this basically city grant or the city stipend is. So we'll be able to, I'm pretty confidently recoup these losses, but I agree that we should make sure to prioritize paying Margaret back for time.
So that's my proposal, is to let you know that we're hopefully going to get all of it back into our budget and hopefully within the next month. In the meantime, I'm asking for permission to pay her the balance.
Okay, so
Is that a
I don't think
proposal?
there's much else.
That's my proposal.
There's not much else discussion for me. I move
Well, we have to
approve
second
the-
it though.
Okay, I move we approve the reimbursement for the attorney fees.
I second.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
It's so weird for me to abstain. Should I be abstaining on this one?
No.
I feel like the person who brings the proposal isn't supposed to.
No,
No,
this is just business. This
Yeah.
isn't your personal
All right.
proposal.
For me, it was more like conflict of interest, like if you've been represented multiple times and your vote means that it's like second vote.
Or
and
if it's
second
your
say.
like baby project
Getting a
or whatever.
kickback from Margaret.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had, all in favor? No. Okay, Mono Village?
Sure, so Creative Science School does this little festival every year, and we've had a table there in the past, though not recently, I gather. And it's free, so basically we need to commit to tabling to the event, and wait, what's the day of the?
So what is the date of this?
Is it on the 19th?
Well, no, I think it's on the 20th, actually. I think
Is
it's that
it
week.
Saturday or Sunday?
It's a Sunday.
Then it's the 20th.
It's the 20th. So yeah, so May 20th, it's a great little festival. They've got lots of kids activities and a lot of nonprofits set up booths, and again, it's a free event, and it would be great for us to be there. So I just wanted to see if there was interest. We will need, a couple of folks to staff it.
All right, we have 7% battery, so let's get all the important things in there.
It's the last one.
So tabling,
Yeah.
Yeah, tabling.
we don't need a vote for that, though, we just call for volunteers.
Yeah, we can call for volunteers. I don't know, do we need a vote for it? You tell me.
I can't assuage your concern. So I
Official board
move we sponsor or support the Creative
tabling
Science
of
School,
it, yeah.
Mono Village.
Do you need money for materials, right?
No, I do want us to get some merch that we can sell at some of these things, just some, perfect. Let's talk about it, yeah. Let's talk about that.
Great.
That'd be cool.
It's a bummer it's right after the housing forum. I was going to say it'd be a perfect opportunity to try to recruit, but it's just a little off.
Right.
But maybe the housing forum will get delayed again. I won't hope for that, but it could happen, so.
Do we have a vote? I move we support it. Brad seconded. All in favor? All right, it's unanimous. Or, and one abstain.
I don't know.
I will try to see if I can table that day.
That'd be great. I'll put out, we're gonna have to start getting some calendars and
5/20.
other stuff coming up.
Okay, final parking day.
Yeah, so Saturday, it's a free application. The Land Use and Transportation Committee is taking on setting up this. It's like an 8 by 40 foot space, and we're gonna do, so first of all, I would like the board's support to move forward with it, no costs. And then secondly, we don't have to do it tonight, but it would be great. I think I want some opportunities for us to get passersby to engage with us. Like I said, Kate's slower start petition we'll have. We're gonna do it's National Poetry Month, so we're gonna have some poetry to read and do Montevilla haikus opportunity, and then something for kids. So that's happening.
Great, I move we sponsor Amanda's parking day event.
What day is this again?
Saturday the 14th.
The 14th.
Of what?
April 14th, this Saturday.
Well, I'm also hoping too that I can make sure we have, I would hope we could have an event confirmation, and not only that, but.
Oh, yeah, that'd be
stuff.
great.
That'd be the perfect
Yeah.
time to recruit, so I'll just try to prioritize that this week.
Okay.
Any second?
Who moved, who seconded?
Okay. No, I don't know.
Anyone?
I didn't say. Sure.
Okay, anyone?
Yeah, I said-
John
I said-
Roderick,
I
seconded?
repeat.
All in favor?
Okay. I'll abstain on this one.
Okay.
I don't know what it is, but I'll.
It's a park.
We're taking over parking places for a
Okay.
little park.
I mean, if I wasn't at the participatory budgeting forum, which is the same day, I would totally be there.
And we're gonna do it through the evening, so maybe you can
Well,
drop
there's the
by.
Brentwood Darlington thing as well that day,
Yeah.
and the Mount Tabor
Brentwood Darlington's 10 to 1.
open
It's a really
house
big
at
day.
BCC that day as well.
Oh, that's gonna be crazy.
What is?
The Mount Tabor Reservoir
Oh, yeah, the open house.
Open house,
Oh.
PCC on that day too.
I'm also doing a
That's 419.
opening reading for my friends from Mother Folk, yeah, so I'm just saying.
Okay, do we have any more business?
It's a big.
Nope.
No other business for me?
No? Amanda, you good?
Nope, I'm good.
Great. I move we adjourn the meeting.
Oh my god, I do.
I second that.
That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Aye.
Aye.
No.
All right.